Hello everybody, it is I, Walter, the Germany Ball, and I am here with my top 10 NES games. Now this is going to be a list that might make some people angry because I don't have an NES, and I don't have an emulator for the NES. All I have is the Nintendo Switch online app and some NES games on my trusty old Wii U. But this has some of the best, it has most of the great NES games. However, I will give a special shout out to the Castlevania, Megaman, and Final Fantasy series, as well as DuckTales. I can't give them an in-depth review, but I have played some of them a while back, and I know that they're great games. And so I'm sorry that they can't be on this list, but I'm acknowledging how great they are, and I understand if people are mad they're not on the list, but I still acknowledge they're great games. And make sure to leave a comment down below about what games you thought should have been on the list, or you think that I should check out, because I definitely have more nostalgia for the Super Nintendo and Genesis, and I have the most nostalgia of all for the PlayStation 1 with Crash Bandicoot and mostly Spyro. So I haven't really experienced much of the NES, so definitely let me know what some great games I haven't checked out yet are. And without further ado, let's get into it. Hello everybody, and this is number 10. This is a game you might not recognize because it's kind of obscure. It's called Kid Icarus, and it was made by basically one guy, and it's still number 10. It's only number 10 because it can be kind of confusing, and not a lot of people know how great this game is. So I bet there would be some controversy if I put this at a higher spot. But this game is still great. It's based off of Greek mythology, and basically it's an action or adventure game similar to Metroid and combined with Mario. So it's really unique and fun and has a lot going for it. Sadly though, it's a bit weird and sloppy sometimes, and it's really difficult to wrap your head around some of the level layouts, but it is still a great NES game that you should definitely check out if you have the chance. Coming in at number 9, we have Balloon Fight, and this is a great game. I believe it's an arcade port, but it does a great job. It was one of the launch titles for the system. It's a great fun game, especially in multiplayer, as you can either try to defeat your opponent, or you can try to work together. It's all really up to you, and it's a never-ending game, basically. You'll never be able to beat this unless you sink hours and hours and hours and hours into it. But it's really fun. It has 3 main modes: 1-player, 2-player, and Balloon Trip. Balloon Trip is basically this more story-oriented mode, so it's like an adventure. You're going around defeating other people on balloons. The controls might be a bit jarring at first, but don't worry, they're great and they complement the design of the stages very well. The single-player mess-around mode is really fun as well, and 2-player is definitely the star of the show with so many options and such fun to be had. Next up, we have a game that you might not know about either. However, it is a very famous game for those who are familiar with the NES, and that is River City Ransom. Now, this game was made quite late in the NES's life, not after the Super Nintendo, but still quite late, and it is a great example of the graphics on this machine. It looks really nice, and it's overall a really fun game. However, the design could use a bit of tweaking. And I know there are a lot of modern River City games too that I have yet to check out, but I'd love to at some point. And what's interesting is that this game, while I consider it to be really fun and great and has a lot of RPG style elements, but it is still a true beat 'em up, it has some gross parts, and that's why it's not so far down on the list, is because it can be a bit confusing. There can be some cheap enemies who jump out and attack you, but it's still a fun and great game. Next up, we have Dr. Mario in number 7. Now, I know how I said River City Ransom looks great, but this game puts that game to shame, and that just rhymed. I don't know why. But this game is great. It's really fun and has a lot of depth to it. Great music. One of my favorite puzzle games. Just a great port overall. Just a great version of this game. Really fun. Good job. Next up, at number 6, we have Kirby. And this game introduced many series staples, but most notably, the copyability. And this game is simply great. Great, colorful graphics, some frame rate slowdowns, but overall it does a great job of producing lots on the screen with great graphics and background effects, while still being incredibly transparent and fun. And it's a bit slippery and hard to control at first, but you'll get used to it because this is a phenomenal game. And in number 5, we have Punch-Out! It was originally known as Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, but Mike Tyson overwent a number of controversies. I'm not going to go into that because they're not really an appropriate thing to be talking about right now, but just know, poor Nintendo, they got his endorsement and his appearance to combat with Sega's many appearances like Michael Jackson, Tommy Lasorda at the launch of the Genesis, and people all of a sudden started to not really be a fan of Mike Tyson anymore. And this game is wicked difficult, but with the rewind feature on the app, and even if you don't have that version, with previous versions with a lot of practice, this game makes for an incredible, tense, and really fun game of boxing. It's great. The only problem is it could make for an amazing 2-player mode. Sadly, it doesn't have it, but it's really fun throwback game, and you should definitely check it out. Next up, we have an odd bugger of a game that I consider to be one of the supreme games on the platform. It's called Startropics, and you've probably never heard of it because there's only been 2 games released, both on the NES. However, it is incredibly admired by fans, and I really like this game. It's similar to Zelda in a lot of ways because it's a top-down perspective. You go into dungeons, solve puzzles. However, it's a lot less cryptic than the original Zelda, and the only reason I'm putting it higher up on the list than some other games is because at times it can be a bit wonky and weird, and not as many people know this game. However, I do believe this is really, really great, and Startropics is an innovative title that you should definitely check out. Next up, we got one that you probably don't know. It's really obscure, and you might not even know what this is, but it's called Super Mario Bros. You probably have never even heard of it. But it's this really fun platformer, and that's why it's at number 3. Come on, you know what this is. You know why it's number 3. It's a great game, launched with the system. Basically, this and a couple other NES launch titles saved the video game industry, but mostly this one. And you have to admit that this is just a great game. And if you don't, screw you, man. Next up, we have The Legend of Zelda. And this has a special version on the console, and I don't usually play the special versions on the Switch, but this one is an exception because instead of just skipping you to the last level like most of them do, it gives you some extra power-ups and hints and some extra hearts, so it's actually playable. This game innovated so much. It was basically the first game to have a real save battery feature. It has created one of the most, basically what I would consider the second most known Nintendo franchise of all time, just behind Mario. It's number 2 on my list just because it's cryptic and hasn't aged the best. I would say Startropics has aged better than it, but it innovates way more. It has better combat, and it's just overall an incredible experience that you cannot pass up, no matter how cryptic and janky you feel it is compared to the newer games in the series. This is where it all began, and it began right. Next, in number 1, we have Super Mario Bros. 3. Now, you might be angry at me for not picking Zelda 1 or even Mario 1 over this, but it's my favorite game on the platform. Now, I definitely think Zelda innovated more, but this game, 1, created the introduction of major video game distribution with the Wizard movie, which isn't a great movie, but it was innovative for the time. And this game has new features like guess what? An overworld. It was the first Mario game to do this, and one of the first games to do this. It's innovative. It has so many secrets. Now, I would say Mario World innovated with its replayability more, but this game is definitely something you have to check out. And if you don't, I swear you are the worst. This game, while it may look a little weird compared to some others, introduced so many new power-ups, gameplay mechanics, and overall is just a fantastic, supreme platformer that includes such an expansive campaign, actually good two-player that uses the turn-based mechanic to its advantage, unlike some other games that just kind of throw the two-player in there without much care. This game is amazing. So yeah, that was my top 10 NES games. I really hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to making more top 10s. I could do Super Nintendo, or Wii, or Wii U, or maybe GameCube, or N64. I could do Sega Master System, and I could do PlayStation 1 and 2 and 4 and Xbox 360. Maybe a top 5 of that, because I haven't played that much. But yeah, so definitely check the NES out, especially if you have a Switch or an original NES. Check out the top 10 games that I just mentioned. Those are basically all of the good ones, other than some arcade ports, some RPGs, some other ones that don't personally appeal to me, but that are still great games. And definitely check out Megaman series, Castlevania series, Final Fantasy series, and DuckTales. There's a remastered version of DuckTales. On either the Switch, there are some collections of those series, or on the original NES. So yeah, definitely check those out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. This is me, Walter the Germany Ball, out. Be safe, and don't get caught coronavirus.